Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the Darwin FPV BabyApe 3. This is their latest edition on the BabyApe. They actually have a full lineup. The Mini, that's a 2-inch prop, and yeah, that'll be coming shortly. And the BabyApe 3 Pro, which obviously I don't even have the props on yet, but very similar to this, except it runs 4S and has GPS. You'll find all these on Darwin FPV's website, and I'll link it down below. The flight controller is the Darwin FPV F411. That's a 15 amp all-in-one flight controller with Express LRS receiver built right into. You can see the little IPEX connector right there above my fingernail. And while mine is analog, it is running a 1.2 watts. You can get it with Walksnail Avatar as well as the DJI-04 Lite. The motors are Darwin FPV Bling 1104 5000 kV. And on those motors are Jim Fan 3016 Hurricane tri-bladed props. It weighs 82.26 grams. Darwin FPV has this specialized 3S 500 milliamp battery, which you can see there. Does not have the balance lead on it. You have a little dongle that goes with the balance lead for your charging purposes. It goes just like this. And with that battery, it weighs 124.69 grams. This battery also fits and works, and I flew with it. This is the Lava 550, a 3S battery. And with the Lava, it weighs 125.19 grams. Oops, 125.2. Bottom plate is 2.5 millimeters thick. Side plate is 2 millimeters thick. And just like that one. And the top plate is 1 millimeter thick. The maximum width of a battery that can fit inside their little tray is 16.76 millimeters. But if you take out the rubber pieces, you can get a 20 millimeter battery in there. They include rubber bands, but I really think if you have the room, you should use a battery strap right through this area, just above your VTX, if it does have that space as my analog version does. But with other boards, you might not quite have enough space. Battery strap's a good idea. I think we'll need it. And motor post to motor post, I'm getting about 130 millimeters. It does come with extra rubber bands if you do need them. You actually have some metal nuts. You've got some other various screws that you use for assembly if they vibrate loose. And we do have 2 little tiny stickers. Also comes with some promotional material. Safe Flying Advanced Safety Feature Reminder Card in 2 languages. And finally, a full sheet of stickers. Nope, it only comes with 1 set of props. You don't get any extras. Specifications for this flight, the environmental specifications that is 50 degrees and winds of 12 to 21 miles an hour, and you will hear those winds from time to time. You'll notice a few things when I do this punch out over the house. Listen to the props. Didn't get nearly as far as I usually do, right? It should fly over. You can probably say, well, that's the wind pushing you back. Well, it's going to go again here. That's a little bit more normal. Well, what I found was they have set the ESCs to 48 kilohertz, which the premise of 48 kilohertz is that you get longer flight times because the motor slows down more slowly as you come off the throttle. So therefore you actually get a little bit of free thrust. But my understanding was that really didn't have any benefit on motors that were larger than, say, the 0802s or that sort of ilk, 0702s, the small whoop sort of motors where you get extra fly time. But you could kind of hear it as it flies over the house when I come off the throttle, that the props are still spinning up, and that's actually propelling us down a little bit, so we're not getting the float as far as we might normally. Otherwise, one of the other flight characteristics that I noticed when I was flying this, especially if you're used to flying other quads, is it's going to feel a little bit floaty, and for some people that's off. I don't usually mind it, I just notice it, and you just have to adjust a little bit of your throttle management when something feels floaty. At least that's the premise I operate under, is that if it's just light and it's got good power to thrust ratio, it'll feel floaty, which means you can actually just fly faster and you have a little less inertia potentially at the same sort of speeds of something that doesn't feel floaty because it's heavier, it doesn't have the power to weight ratio. But that's going to change depending upon which version you go for. I know it's been a while. We don't see a lot of analog bind and fly reviews on the channel. They just aren't really all that popular. Not that the viewers aren't there, but one of the things with the companies is they see the hype and the marketing and stuff, so they're always wanting to go with, DJI or something along that line. Fortunately, this one is offered with all, well, not all of the video systems, but you can get it, as I said, with the DJI-04. You can get it with the Avatar Walksnail. You can also get it with analog. This 1.2 watt VTX, I'm not sure if it's actually outputting that. Unfortunately, I don't have a meter for that, so I can't tell you if it actually is or not. I did some other testing that I can't really show you here because of federal regulations, let's just say, where if you're flying out of visual line of sight, you can get yourself into trouble when it comes to posting those things on YouTube and for all to see. But I did some testing, and it does get better, at least video reception, than say a 400 milliwatt, which you would think is pretty obvious because it's supposed to be 3 times as much. But it was just one of those things that I am seeing some break up, and sometimes I'm flying behind myself. I am using the HD0 Goggles V2, or the Goggles 2. So unlike the background image that is the Goggles V1 that has the rapid fire module, I'm now using the Goggles 2 with the internal module and a single antenna. While I think the reception on that is very, very good, especially when it comes to the internal module, it probably isn't. It's so close, but I haven't seen enough testing side by side with other modules. I believe I did some of my own back when the goggles came out, and what I saw that it was good enough for me in order to not have to bother with that other module. But that could play a role into some of the breakup that we're seeing. Of course, if you fly one of the other video systems, not a big deal at all. So I think one of the first things I would suggest to anyone who's getting the analog version of this is a pretty inexpensive and really nice upgrade is to upgrade the camera from the Caddx Ant, which I think I forgot to put in the specs, so please note that is the camera. Caddx Ant is the camera. And go to the Caddx Baby Retail 2. It won't hardly add more than about 1.5 grams, and that camera is so much nicer than this camera. And it's only $19. Well, at least here in the US, I saw a listing right before I started recording. It was $19. And yeah, we ended the flight right there. I highlight the fact that with the rubber band, it doesn't quite hold itself all together. That was why I picked that particular flight. Not because it was the fanciest flight or the best flight, but because it highlights and it shows us all that battery ejections do happen. Now, thankfully, it did not pull my battery lead plumb off the board. That is another thing that I would suggest correcting. We have some nice little fingers down here around the carbon fiber. Take a 1-cent zip tie, run it through one side, grabbing both wires down the other side, zip tie it shut. It would be good if you could get your zip tie knot, so to speak, on the top side, but that's going to be a little bit more cumbersome. So just mind as you come in and land that could be wearing that knot down. You may need to snip it and replace it to make sure if you do have a battery ejection that it has that zip tie to pull against instead of pulling directly off to your solder pads. We do have this capacitor, which I oftentimes draw out, but I think the 2 upgrades I would suggest is one, if depending upon the version that you have, if you can run a battery strap and just loop it around, that's going to be better. And getting the Caddx Baby Retail 2, which is a $19 camera, and it should just slide right in there. It should be a direct replacement. We've got the connector on the Caddx Ant. Of course, if you're flying DJI 04, you're not going to be swapping out the camera. Maybe you put in a wide-angle lens adapter of Caddx, the Walksnail Avatar system. You know, they have their own cameras. So that Caddx Baby Retail 2 is only if you're using the analog version. I was pretty surprised that they do have their own. Apparently, I'm sure someone makes it for them, but it's a 1.2 watt. So if you like to fly analog and you like to fly out farther away from yourself, it should help you with your reception. I do want to highlight, with this battery, it is very, very clean. So we just kind of push it down in there. We shove her forward. It fits in there very neatly. The print, everything comes in there real neatly. And then you just plug in and you keep your battery lead is out of harm's way from your props. So you can't hardly see that, but it makes things real nice and tidy. Now, what I did in order to get more flights, because DarwinFPV, while they sent this for review and they have no part in what I say, they only sent me 1 battery like this. So I only flew that, one flight at a time, whereas I have a bunch of these batteries. And this is what you saw in the flight. A cruisy flight style fly with this particular battery would get me 7 minutes, and a faster flight style gets me about the same, a little bit less than the 550 on average. Of course, I'm just testing the 1 battery, so those numbers may be high or low, but this is what I would do with my Lava 2 batteries. Not quite as neat, but I would get them in there, and you can see I've got a little bit of play. So then I would take my battery lead, and I would put those wires right in here, and then I would plug in, and then I would take my rubber band, and I would just go around here, and boom. That's how I did fly it, but I still recommend a strap. Just take the strap right around your front part of your lead. I think it will do a better job of keeping the battery in place, and you won't have an ejection like I showed you in the video. If you fly like I do, and you do some of those moves where you punch open over stuff and you want to float, I would suggest changing the ESC kilohertz back down to 24 kilohertz. That will help the prop slow down more normally or quicker. I don't know that you're getting any sort of additional extra flight time using 48 kilohertz on this size of motor. I don't think so, but I could be proven wrong there. I didn't have enough outside flight time to do my own testing with that, but that's something to look at. I used the ESC configurator website in order to plug in and see that it was set to 48 kilohertz, as you see here in the screenshot that I saved. It just is a proof of concept. I do want to point out the Express LRS antenna here. It goes through the carbon fiber. So if you do have to replace that, you can see mine's a little wanged up over here. I kind of not so straight. To get to that, you're going to have to take out screws on here, and then both sides down. Well, that's not a screw. Let's just click in. And then, of course, your camera, at least on one side, you'll have to do those screws. You don't necessarily have to do two sides, but you're going to have to get those screws loose, pull one side of the plate off in order to replace the antenna or really get down into the base in order to do any sort of repairs. But your solder for your motor pads are right out here. I think you could do that without doing a disassembly, which is nice. And when it comes to repairs, one of the things Darwin FPV always touts is the cheap cost of replacement parts. I think these motors are $5 each. So that gives you a baseline. Of course, I will link this down in the video description below so you can see the repair costs depending upon which version you get. Most of these parts I think are going to be all the same regardless, other than the VTX, of course. Geez, I got some grass still stuck in there. The VTX, of course, will be different if you go with Walksnail or DJI. The DJI and Walksnail ones, you'll see the visual on their website, has a little bit of a yellow casing, a little yellow print. That covers or holds the camera in there. That's something else to note. But if on the analog version, there is a slight adjustment that you can make, move the camera forward or back. Not much more back. I didn't have any camera or canopy print in view at where it's currently sitting, and you can see there that we do get a little bit of camera protection behind that print and that carbon fiber. So I could move it back even a little bit further if I wanted more, or by chance, depending upon you swap out, say you take my advice and you swap out to the Caddx Baby Ratel, it might have a slightly larger field of view, and then you end up with a little bit of the print in view, and then you want to shove it back further. That, depending upon where the mount point is in association with the end of the camera lens, that may get that stuff out of view. So that's something to know, that I don't know if that camera is going to show any of this if you swap out to the Caddx Baby Ratel 2. It's just a camera that I really like. It's really light and it's really cheap. The BabyApe 3 ranges in price from $148 all the way up with the DJI 04 and Express RS with foot pads to $273. Of course, you can get it without a video system and add your own if that's something that you're into or want to do. As I said a couple times in this video, I will link this as well as the others that are newly launching from the Darwin FPV website down in the video description. The mini version will be coming soon. I have nearly completed my flying. I did some more flying this evening. I need to do my review of the flight footage to see if I want to finalize what flights I'm going to use in the video. As I started the video, this one we probably won't see for a while. I haven't even got it bound up to my radio, and we do have a lot of family events coming up here shortly, so I'm not going to have time to really get through everything that is sitting on my desk at this time. But if you are interested in any of these and you want to take a look, yeah, there'll be a link down in the video description. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comments section below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.